What is up, Diatribe, and welcome to the first episode of the LA Football Podcast here on the Bleav Podcast Network with the Coach and the Don. Bleav Podcast Network is Los Angeles' #1 sports podcast network. It's the only place with a show for every team in LA and more. We believe in our LA teams. Do you believe? Coach, what's going on?
Not much, man. How's it going tonight?
It's going great. Excited about this new journey we're taking with the Bleav Sports Network. I think we're going to do some big things.
I know we are.
Yeah.
I believe.
You believe. There it is. We're believers. Is that a thing? Like believers?
We are now. We're not believers. We're believers.
Believers. Yeah, we got a fun show for tonight. Episode 1 of the LA Football Podcast. So we'll be covering all major football in the Los Angeles area, primarily the Rams, Chargers, Trojans, and Bruins. So tonight we're going to get to a couple pro days. UCLA, at the time of this recording, had their pro day on Tuesday, and USC's pro day will be tomorrow or Wednesday morning at 10:30 Pacific time a.m. We're also going to get into some free agency stuff with the Rams. Some stuff broke tonight. Some exciting things if you're a Rams fan. Chargers, little quiet on the Western Front, but still made some moves and did some big things. So let's start with the Rams. How does that sound, Coach?
It sounds fantastic.
Great. So breaking it down slowly, or quickly, I should say. Major signings. Eric Weddle, kind of old news, but got him for a 2-year deal, roughly about $12.2 million on that contract. They re-signed Dante Fowler to a 1-year prove-it deal. Blake Bortles was brought in yesterday to be the backup on a 1-year deal. And then Corey Littleton was given a second-round tender, so he'll be back. No one's put an offer sheet, so he's all likelihood should be back. And then just today, Clay Matthews, edge rusher, comes home to his playground at the Coliseum, signs a 2-year deal. I'm hearing roughly $16 million or so. The terms haven't, I don't think, officially been released, but that seems to be what the numbers indicate. So, of those first ones that we just kind of mentioned, what jumps off the page at you? What excites you?
Honestly, I really enjoy the Blake Bortles signing. I think that's a really smart signing when you think of the guru that Sean McVay is. He if anybody can air quote fix Blake Bortles, it's going to be Sean McVay. And you think about it, I mean, there are teams out there that have a hard enough time finding a starting caliber quarterback. And for a team to go out and be able to sign a guy like Bortles who's struggled, but he's also played really well at times in his career, to have a guy like that as your backup, man, it's I think it's a great idea, great signing to bring him in. And like I said, it's hard enough to find 32 starting caliber quarterbacks. When you get into that second tier, and you got to, there's not 64 starting caliber quarterbacks. There's not 32 starting caliber quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah.
So to bring in a guy that has the experience, that can run the offense, that can get you through the game if need be, if Goff were to ever go down, I think it's great. And I don't think it deserves to be hated on. I think it's a really smart move.
Yeah. No, I like it too. I mean, as you alluded to, just getting that starter caliber, if you want to call him that. But I mean, if everyone remembers, he was a 3rd overall pick. So now in that QB room, you have a 1st overall pick, you have a 3rd overall pick. Bortles is 26 years old. Obviously, Goff is the future, as he should be. But if anything were to happen, you would think you have very capable fans, and you never know what can happen. I mean, you look at guys that kind of change teams, and, we talk about this a lot. Quarterback in the NFL, if you're drafting in the NFL, you're talented. You can play the position. I think one of the main reason why guys flop, aside from maybe lack of work ethic or bad study habits, more mental things almost. But aside from that, it's scheme fits. Some guys are just square pegs trying to be put in round holes, and they just don't fit the scheme, or the coordinator and them don't mesh well. We see it all the time. Then you see guys go to a different system, different scheme, different situation, and have almost a rebirth. I don't want to at all make this comparison in terms of actual quarterback trajectory, but a name that kind of comes to mind, if anyone remembers, especially Rams fan out there, Hall of Famer Kurt Warner. Greatest show on turf, had his tremendous career there, ends up leaving and becomes the backup for the Giants. Looked like his career was over. Gets signed then to the Cardinals as another backup. Ends up then taking over the starting role and leads them to Super Bowl. So you never know when a guy can come in and really change his career around. God forbid anything were to happen to Goff, but I think it's a good signing. I like it a lot.
Yeah, yep, I do too. I do too. And obviously Clay Matthews signing, it's the hometown boy coming home as you alluded to. But I think that's great too. Edge rusher is was definitely in need. I mean, they signed Dante Fowler. They like what he brings to the table. They like the scheme fit. They're really excited about what he can do in a full offseason. He was a midseason trade last year, and the way he was able to contribute with such little time, learning the scheme, learning with Wade, with a full offseason now, man, who knows? This kid might take the league by storm. I remember he was such a highly touted prospect coming out.
Yeah,
Um,
another third overall pick.
right? Yeah.
We got a lot of first
Uh,
rounders on that team.
Yes, there are a lot of talented kids, but yeah, I guess I'm kind of getting off topic here. But yeah, I like the Clay Matthews signing as well.
Yeah, he comes home, former USC project, um, grew up in the LA area. Had a down year last year. I think he only finished with about 3.5 sacks in his kind of final year of his deal. So obviously not the year he wanted. I think he'll want to improve on that. I think coming home will kind of give him that extra edge or boost. Speaking of edge, though, it's interesting that I've seen a few reports that he played in 2014 and 2015. He played on the inside because the Packers were short staffed there in the linebacking core, so he played inside on that 3-4. And then so there was murmurs that because the Rams cut Mark Barron, they'd be looking for a versatile linebacker that could play inside. And so with signing him, that was brought up of him being able to play inside. I personally don't see it. I mean, he's aging, 32, 33 years old. Slowed down. Wade Phillips' defense, when you have the inside guys, he wants fast guys that can cover in the open field, and I don't think Matthews is doing that anymore. Matthews is your kind of 2, 3 down guy that's just going to get after the quarterback. But people can speculate all they want. I don't see it, but I mean, do you think he can play inside anymore? He did a decent job when he was asked to.
Yeah, I mean, and that seems like it was ages ago now, but
Yeah, I mean, almost 5 years ago.
um, I think in certain situations he'll probably move around a little bit, but I can't imagine him being anything more than a primarily a pass rusher at this stage in the game. If they move him inside, it'll be special packages. He's not going to be in every down backer there. I can't imagine that happening.
I can't either, especially the alluded to release of Mark Barron. I mean, he was essentially a safety playing inside linebacker, and then you're going to ask a 33-year-old slower version to play the same position. So I don't see that happening. I think he was brought in to rush the quarterback.
Yeah, that for sure. He was brought in to, and I think he's going to thrive with offenses having to account for Donald. I mean, it's gonna free up Matthews, and now and with Fowler on the other side, I think Matthews might have a surprisingly bounce back year if he can get one on ones with right tackles, or if he can maybe rush on the inside from an inside backer position in special packages. I think he's gonna have a pretty solid year. I think he's in a really good situation.
Yeah, what it when I think of what comes to mind, and maybe they're not the same talent level of players. They have similarities, but I think of how much he'll love coming into Wade Phillips' system, and I immediately am reminded of DeMarcus Ware, kind of in the twilight of his career as a free agent coming from Dallas to the Broncos. And not that he didn't have a down year by any means with Dallas, but he was on the down end of his career, and then came to the Broncos and didn't miss a beat in Wade Phillips, and had put up great numbers there in his time in Denver. So I think Matthews will definitely. I think he'll have more than 3.5 sacks next year. I'd be willing to take the over on that.
Yeah, yeah. If I was a betting man, I would do the same thing.
Yeah, so I think he'll have a good year, good little rebirth there. Funny story, when I worked in well, I guess not really funny story, but when I worked at a restaurant in Orange County for a while, there was a couple that came in. They're regulars, probably ate there once or twice a month, so everyone knew them. Super nice couple. And then one time, they'd been coming in for years, so we knew them very well. One night I was bartending, and the husband was there early, waiting for his wife. So he was, grabbed a nice scotch. I mean, him, we're talking, whiskeys and bourbons, and drinking with the Don. Even though I was on the clock, he was having a drink with me. I just wasn't joining him. We started talking football, and he casually put a shameless plug out there that he had nephews in the NFL. So I mean, naturally, I was interested. Uh, like I said, precursor before, they've been coming in for years, so I had never known this. Um, so I kind of start prodding. I'm like, I don't want to push, but who are your nephews? He's like, oh, I don't know if you've heard him, but Jake Matthews, he's an offensive lineman. Um, Clay Matthews, he's a linebacker. I'm like, yes, I know who those guys are. So,
Hmm.
and these are guys that came in forever. So now, now one of his nephews is coming. It was actually his wife's blood nephew. He was the, I guess, uncle-in-law, if that's the correct phrase. But yeah, kind of cool. I was like, this was at the end of my tenure, and I'm like, I'm just finding this out now. All these years you guys have been coming in, and you didn't tell me you had a famous relative, not just famous, but like an icon. So
Dang.
yeah,
Yeah, that would have been nice to know a few years back, huh?
yeah. But hey, now I'll be giving them a shout since he's coming back to LA. So maybe we'll go eat dinner at that restaurant all together. Maybe that'd be fun.
Sounds like a
It's
plan.
in your neck of the woods, brother.
Let's do it.
Yeah, shout out Roman Cucina in Fullerton. There you
We
go.
just ate there last night,
There's
actually.
there's a shameless plug for them. They can go. People can go enjoy a nice Italian food there. Um, a few more Rams news, I guess. Malcolm Brown, the backup running back, who has been really good spelling for Gurley before he got hurt, and has a lot of excitement around him. He was signed to an offer sheet from Detroit, worth 3.25 million. Now the Rams, he was a restricted free agent, so the Rams put an a tender on him as an original round tender. And so for people out there that maybe don't know what that is or understand what that is, he was undrafted. So usually when you put a round tender on him, it would mean that if the Rams decide not to match the offer, that team would have to give up that draft pick or that round to the Rams. So if you see like a second round tender, that means the team has to give up like a second round pick to sign that guy. But because he was undrafted, the tender essentially does nothing, and if the Rams don't match, then he can just walk and sign with Detroit, and they get nothing in return. So why I say this all and bring this all up is with that Matthews signing, like I said, the numbers haven't officially come out yet, but at that estimated 16 or so million, if you break that in half, that's about 8 million this year. The Rams literally have about 8 million left in cap space. That literally maxes him out. So needless to say, if that's the case, Malcolm Brown is not going to be in a Rams uniform next year. Is there something you think they need to do to ensure he's back, or you think they're fine just letting him walk?
At this point, with the Clay Matthews signing and the Fowler signing and the Weddle signing, I don't know if they can bring him back. Um, I think it could be a blow because I mean obviously with Gurley's situation and we don't really know what C.J. Anderson's going to do yet. That they definitely need a solid backup for Gurley. I don't know if it's going to be Malcolm Brown though. I think the Lions are going to be able to get him out of LA and bring him up to Detroit. But there are a few names still on the market. A guy like Alex Collins, he's a restricted free agent. A really interesting name to think of is Spencer Ware from Kansas City. He's still available.
Mm-hmm.
T.J. Yeldon, but I think one name you really have to keep an eye on and someone who I think they can actually afford is Isaiah Crowell, who was just recently released by the Jets. Any one of those guys can come in and play a backup role to Gurley. So I don't think it'd be a huge deal for Malcolm Brown to go if they don't bring in somebody else to replace those reps. Sure, it's going to be a big deal, but I think he's a replaceable guy, so I don't think they need to stress too much about bringing him back in.
Yeah, well, and in reality, even if they did clear cap space, that's an expensive backup running back. I mean, there are starters in this league that aren't making that kind of money, and he would be the backup making 3.25 million because they'd have to match it. So I think the writing's on the wall. He's going to go to the Lions regardless. I mean, at this point, they can't afford him, but if they were to make room, it wouldn't make any sense. I still am high on John Kelly, who was a rookie last year out of Tennessee. I think he still has a lot of upside and could be a um, fun player there as well. But yeah, I definitely would think they would bring in some free agent if they're able to move some cap around. Now, that being said, is there anyone currently on the roster that you think maybe they decide the next week or so or before that June 1st deadline they cut to free up more cap space?
Well, I know there's somebody that's a potential cap casualty. I don't know if it'll happen. I know there's reports out there that says it won't. But one name to think about is along the D line is Michael Brockers. Um, I know he's got a lot on the against the books, but we were talking a little bit pre-show about him, and I think you're the one that actually brought it up, so I kind of stole your thunder, and I apologize for that.
It's all good.
But it's an interesting thought. I'm gonna actually disagree with you. I don't think Brockers gets cut. I think they're gonna keep him around. Um, but at this stage of the game with the cap situation they're in, nothing's off the table.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think they will cut him because I mean, there's been reports out there that they've emphatically said they're not going to trade or cut him. But this was before they signed Clay Matthews, obviously too. So um, things obviously have changed potentially, and with him having almost 11 million due this year, and here's the confusing part: it's not specifically, or I guess I should say, there's conflicting reports what his dead money would be. I've seen some that say about 3 million. I've seen others say 750,000. So if it's 3 million in dead money, then it wouldn't make a lot of sense. Obviously, you would still clear 7 or 8 million. But if it's 750,000, that's nothing in today's NFL dead money. So then it would make a lot of sense. Not saying he hasn't been good, but for his value, is he worth 11 million? No, but I think they could find. I mean, we talked about D tackles last podcast out there. I mean, there's still a lot of good ones they could get cheaper than 11 million a year. One right down the road, Darius Philon, who we'll get to in a minute when we get to the Chargers, but they could get him for a lot less probably than 11 million a year, and he'd be, I think, just as productive as what Brockers has done. But that being said, I don't know if they're going to do it. But with the Matthews signing, it definitely makes things interesting because they potentially, depending how it all plays out, could be really against the cap going in the draft day.
Yeah. Now here's a thought for you. Do you think John Franklin Myers is the player that they trust enough to thrust into a starting role? And maybe if they do cut ties with Brockers, they don't even have to go out in free agency and find a starter. They can just next man up with Franklin Myers. Do you think he's ready for that kind of role?
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think they do have some trust in him, and that's someone they could fill in. And I like the thought of if they were to move on from Brockers and then just not go after someone in free agency, trust Myers, and then just address it in the draft. I mean, we talked about
Yeah.
that before too. There's a lot of good D tackles. Obviously, I don't know who would fall to them in the first, but
Jeffrey
they could get
Simmons.
exactly Jeffrey Simmons like we talked about coming off injury. But if they can wade that out, literally wade that out.
Nice.
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. That was not even intentional. But
You just stumbled into it, man.
yeah,
That's what the great ones do.
yeah, that's right. So yeah, now that you say that, I don't know. I think they could maybe allocate it too for cheaper players. Another guy out there that I know Clay Matthews was linked for basically all of free agency to go there, but Shane Ray is still a free agent. We talked about him on this show before, and if they were able to free up 11 million, they could probably get Shane Ray for 1.5 or 2, and then
But do they need Shane Ray at this point? I mean, you got Donald, you just signed Matthews, you re-signed Fowler. Is there a spot for Ray? Is Ray just going to get lost in the shovel like he did in Denver?
I mean, at this point, if you brought him in, yeah, but just remember that Matthews signed a 2-year deal and is 33, 32 years old. Shane
Sure.
Ray is 26. They could sign him to a 4 or 5 year deal, kind of have him get acclimated in the system again, be kind of that NASCAR package specialist that comes in on third and longs, and then as Clay Matthews kind of see how his wheels are going at the end of the season, he could take on a bigger role. You can never have too many edge rushers in the NFL this day, so.
No, that's absolutely fact. And now that we're on this topic, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But is that the route you would go? Would you rather sign a guy like Shane Ray to maybe have him, maybe step into the starting role once Matthews walks away, or do you target someone in the draft? Because this is a fairly deep edge rushing draft. I think it's pretty top heavy.
Yeah.
But do you think Shane Ray is a better prospect than say some of these rookies that are going to come into the league?
At this point, I think you'd have to, if that was what you were really debating and juggling with, I think you got to just go for the draft then. With how deep it is, with the youth you'd get out of it, with the cheaper salary. Shane Ray has not been good. That's a fact. He has not had a good NFL career, but he's still a veteran now. It's gonna cost you a couple million a year. You're not gonna be able to get him for 600,000 like you can get a third or fourth round pick.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're looking at it like that, I think yeah, you just go the draft. But I still think if they're able to free up 11 million or so, why not sign him and get a guy in the draft too, and then you just have a deep room and go from there.
Yeah, that's very true. And another thing to think about, we haven't really mentioned it. Um, Okoronkwo, the guy they drafted last year at
Hmm.
Oklahoma,
Yeah,
that's another name to keep watch for. I mean, maybe they already have the guy on the roster, and we're just skimming right over him, and we're not even, we're looking at Shane Ray or looking at bringing somebody in there. Maybe he's already on the roster. This kid was a talented prospect coming out of the Sooner State, so. Maybe he could take that leap, and with the second year in Phillips' system, maybe he surprises some people.
yeah. Okoronkwo, I remember a lot of people were big on when they got him because they got it kind of almost a steal.
Hmm.
So that's a good point. That's definitely a name that this happens every free agency. We over speculate or overread into things and at players they should add. And it's you have 53 guys on the roster for a reason. All of them,
Right?
you want all of them to play at one point. So
Yeah. Yeah.
with their
Yeah.
roster as it stands, it's probably looking either they reduce a player, but probably not add anyone before the draft.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think they've done what they're gonna do with the additions, but we'll see. We'll see. Only time will tell.
Yeah. So if they, Leslie kind of taking a page out of Bill Belichick there. Just signing veteran players to low term or how am I low year deals. If that makes sense. Basically, role players to come in, play a year or two, hopefully get him a Super Bowl, and then they'll move on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You keep your staples. Gurley, Donald, Goff. You keep those guys, but yeah, and then just plug here and there with guys that have been around the league and you can trust and you know they're going to get the job done. Yeah. Yeah. That kind of seems to be what they're doing this year.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's move on to the other side of the freeway. Play their home games over in Carson at the StubHub, or yeah, it's still the StubHub Center. Um, the Los Angeles Rams, Los Angeles
Chargers.
Chargers. Yeah, Los
There
Angeles.
we go.
Yeah, at least I didn't say San Diego. So
Right? Yeah. You,
we've
you got
we've
the hard part right.
we've never done that on this show. And I'm not.
We've never called them San Diego
This
Chargers.
sounds silly considering this is episode 1 of LA Football, but the coach and the Don have been doing this for a little over a year. So, but we've never once called them San Diego. So at least we can proudly say that. But the Los Angeles Chargers, fairly quiet free agency, but I think they had one really good signing. I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, they did. Thomas Davis, I think that's a really underrated signing. He's up there in age, kind of like the Clay Matthews signing. He's been around for quite a while, but I think this is a guy that you could plug right in. I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's been a productive player his entire career. Dealt with injuries a little bit toward the latter part of it, but that comes with anybody that's at the stage of the game that he's in. But again, I love the signing. I love Thomas Davis. I always loved him down in Carolina. I think he's going to step in, and I think he's going to help this defense out a lot.
Yeah, no, I love the signing and re-signing of Denzel Perryman. So their
Hmm.
linebacking core is pretty much set or is set. Melvin Ingram, if you want to call him D end outside linebacker, and that kind of hybrid 3-4 they play. But then you got Denzel Perryman and Thomas Davis most likely on the inside there. So yeah, I think he's a good addition. Yeah, up in age, but a wily vet, good leader, sound tackler. Overall, he's had a very healthy career. Little injuries as of late, but um, yeah, I like it a lot. And the other signing they bring in Tyrod Taylor, backup.
Yep.
I mean, we talked about Blake Bortles. It's funny to get excited about backup quarterbacks, but I think this is another slam dunk signing for him.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you look at it. We talked a little bit about it last year when they had Cardell Jones, who's still on the roster, and Geno Smith,
Oh,
who's hitting free agency. But now you got Phillip Rivers, who's obviously one of the best to play the game. Tyrod Taylor, who's bounced around, but he's proven that he can be a reliable starter. And then Cardell Jones. I'm not. If he's sitting third on your depth chart, he's the best. He's the best third tier quarterback in the league. I like Cardell Jones. He's a big armed guy. He looked decent in camp last year, but I think it's a smart move to bring in Tyrod Taylor because if Phillip does go down, I would much rather have Tyrod out there than Cardell.
yeah, Cardell is tough. We were at camp last year, and there were times where we both looked at each other and just said, if this is going to be their backup and Phillip goes down, they are in trouble. He looked erratic, missing screen passes, overthrowing
Yeah.
those, just not good. But yeah, as a third guy, yeah, you're right. Still talent there, still young, so you never
Hmm.
know. But yeah, Tyrod, just like Blake Bortles, he started in this league. So if you get a starter as a backup, you're sitting pretty good.
Yeah, and this is a guy that if he goes to Washington, he is the starter. He's the best quarterback in the room. He beats out Case. He beats out uh,
Colt McCoy.
Colt McCoy. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a pretty talented quarterback room you got there in LA. To go
Miami.
along with
Miami too. He'd probably start
Miami.
Miami.
Yeah, he'd step in and start in Miami. I mean they're going Fitzmagic. That may have been Plan B. I don't know. Um,
I wonder if all like if he's like, man, why did I sign as a backup with the Chargers when I could have probably signed with Miami as a starter?
uh,
Their agents had to be they had to talk or had to know, but I
oh,
know
I'm sure they did, but I mean, you look
he
at it. I mean, who's going to have the better season?
oh as a team, yeah, but I think
Yeah.
he'd make more money as a starter, but I mean he signed with LA before Tana was traded, correct?
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. He went to L.A. before Tannehill was gone. That's very true.
So, but you got to think he's probably thinking, man, hindsight's 2020, but I probably could have made double to be a starter down there.
Yeah, that's true. You'd have to think though, with the inner circles, people
Right?
had to know Tannehill was on the way out.
Oh, had to. If he was being shopped, and if I'm Tyrod's agent, like, probably should wait
Hmm.
because there are going to be a couple openings for a starter. So, unless LA, Tom Telesco just made an offer he couldn't refuse, said, hey, come help us win a championship and play for a winning organization.
Yeah, yeah. That's got to be it. I mean, if you, because like we said, they had to know Tannehill was on the way out, but Chargers are one of the better teams across the board in the NFL. Uh, Top to bottom, roster is very talented. Uh, got to be one of the favorites in the AFC now. Obviously the Browns, all they've done, and the Patriots they're just going to keep getting older and older with Brady and Belichick. Obviously, you got the Chiefs, but they're going through their own issues. Right now, with the Chiefs turmoil, kind of dealing with that. The Raiders are signing a bunch of people, but I not sold on that. Right now, you got to think the Chargers are the favorites in the West.
Yeah, and me and you are AFC West guys. We know the AFC West, and it is. I'm not a fan. I mean, we cover them, and we're obviously on this podcast doing LA football, but neither of us would stand here saying we're Chargers fans. But it's almost offensive how little respect the Chargers get. Even if you talk to anyone, oh, who's the favorites going into 2019? No one even mentions the Chargers. Even like the quote unquote experts forget about the Chargers, and then maybe someone will be like, "Oh, I think the LA Chargers too." And like, "Oh yeah, they have a good roster too," and Telesco's done some good things, but it's like they not really losing anybody, bringing most guys back, and then they're gonna add to their team too. So I know they've been quiet in free agency, but I mean they were a game away from the AFC Championship.
Yeah, and they were right there neck and neck with the MVP of the league. So it's not like what if the Chiefs lose that Ravens game last year, the Chargers are AFC West champions.
Yeah,
So they're not that far behind. I don't, I mean, the Chiefs are a great team, great organization, but the Chargers are nipping at their heels, and I don't think the Broncos are. I mean, they've gotten a lot better than they were last year, and so have the Raiders, but I still think the Chargers are still kind of inching above those other guys.
yeah. AFC West is gonna be good, I think, next year.
I think so too. Yeah,
I
it's
think
kind of hard to argue that point.
yeah, I think the AFC West is gonna be. I mean, it could be one of those years where the AFC West is far and away the most talented division, but the team that wins it goes like 10-6 just because they beat each other up. I mean, it
Yeah.
wouldn't shock me. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I haven't really we haven't broken down the schedules or anything, but it definitely wouldn't shock me if Chargers or Chiefs come out winning, but they're at 10-6, and you have Chargers at 10-6 as well, or 11-5 and 10-6, and then the Broncos at 8-8 or 9-7, and the Raiders at like 7-9. Like it just real
Hmm.
close. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't surprise me either. I think it's going to be a fairly tight race, but no, I kind of like at this point in the game. It's March. We got a long way to go,
Yeah,
but
it's got the
with
draft.
everything that's gone on, I like the Chargers, and I kind of like where they're sitting.
Yeah. So
One name that I think, and we talked about it before, but a name to look out for. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Sue gets brought into the Chargers on a 1-year deal.
well, I was just gonna say it. So they re-signed, as I mentioned, Denzel Perryman, brought back Brandon Mebane, so there's one tackle, and they brought back Adrian Phillips and Jalen Watkins in the back end of the secondary, but they still have about 12 million to play with. So
Hmm.
you were kind of hitting the table for Sue a couple weeks ago, and I think they could get him probably around that 10 to 12 million dollar a year range. I mean, he's up there in age now, and um, do you think they not necessarily need, but do you think they would want him still with, even though they already brought back Brandon Mebane?
Yeah,
Because
I
before
think
you answer, sorry, they still have Darius Philon is not re-signed, Corey Alugit's not re-signed. So essentially on the roster, they have Mebane at nose tackle, and they have Justin Jones and Ty McGill, who are not starters most likely.
yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring up Justin Jones because I liked him last year coming out of the draft. He's a pretty solid player out of North Carolina State. But yeah, I don't know if he's ready for that starting role. If you can bring in a guy like Sue, um, another name to think about is Danny Shelton. That's another guy that could come in and play that defensive tackle role in that defense they run. Yeah, I think if you fill that last piece in with Lugit walking and Philon walking, or if you can bring one of those guys back in. But yeah, you got to plug in that position. And once you do that, your defense is looking fairly solid. I mean, yeah, they safety position you could upgrade. You could make that argument, but that defense is going to be fairly solid next year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you still got Derwin James. You still got. I mean, Joey Bosa missed 10 games last year. No one talks about
Right?
that either, and he should be hopefully fully healthy going into the year.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, they'll be doing something at the tackle position still, whether it be re-signing someone or through the draft. Um, who would you rather have? Sue? Okay, say they let Lugit and Philon go, which I think they
Hmm.
should bring Philon back personally. But let's say they let them walk, which it seems like. I mean, it's free agency's now been a week old, and they're still sitting there. So, would you rather have Sue or a Danny Shelton, as you mentioned?
If
I
it
mean,
depends on how open you think your window is. If you feel like your window's closing, which it's the age Philip Rivers is at, your window's closing pretty quickly.
yeah,
And if you can commit to Sue playing to the level he can play at, Sue's not a guy that's going to come in and play every down 100%. He's just not. That's not the kind of guy he is. He's at the stage in career where he likes to take plays off. He proved that last year with the Rams. And that come playoff time, he turned it the hell on. Um, and now if Sue can do that for the Chargers, bring in Sue. I think at this point with where they are in with their offense with Rivers and his age, um, I think their window's closer to being closed than open. So yeah, to answer your question, I think I would rather have Sue at this point.
yeah. So that's a good way to put it. Because initially I was thinking Danny Shelton just because he's only 25 years old. Obviously, he hasn't lived up to the hype when he was first drafted by the Browns.
Hmm.
But the talent's still there. You know, he's a big run stuffer. He's going to be the guy clog in the middle. But essentially, Brandon Mebane, that's kind of his role at the nose tackle position.
Sure.
Um, and so, like you said, Sue just being hungry for a championship, being 34 years old, trying to put everything into just the last winning season, and then pair him with Philip Rivers, who's obviously hungry for a ship as well. That seems, depending if the price is right, makes sense. So, and obviously
Yeah.
he's not going back to to the Rams because they can't afford him, as we
No.
just
Yeah. I
mentioned
think
about
that
their
door's
roster.
shut.
Yeah, so if he wants to stay in LA, it's going to be with the Chargers, which would be interesting
Yeah.
to see.
Yes, it would. It sure would.
So we're all right. We're going to call that it's going to happen. So big blow for them. Not blow. Before we move on, then we'll get to a little college football, a little UCLA pro day. But Jason Verrett, signing with the Niners. I know he had so much potential and just was always injured. Do you think that's a big loss or kind of more of a? I mean, you hate to say this because a guy can't control necessarily injuries, but more of a good riddance, time to move on.
I think it's disappointing. I think that's the best term to use because Verrett was it still is. He's a talented cornerback, but it just
Oh,
it just didn't seem to work out.
flashed some amazing things, but just could never put it together.
Yeah, but I think it's okay because they got a guy by the name of Trevor Williams that I am really looking forward to this guy taking over that starting role. I
Yeah.
think he's a very underrated cornerback. Uh, Talented kid. He's been in the league only 3 or 4 years. I think he's going to take the league a little bit by surprise in 2019. I would not be surprised if Trevor Williams not only makes a Pro Bowl, but is named to the Defensive All-Pro team.
Woo!
You heard it here, man.
Wow.
Trevor Williams.
I like that.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned him, though, because I'm high on him, too. I mean, he's going into, his fourth season, I think, this year?
I think so, yeah.
So he's had some time to get groomed, but, knows Gus Bradley's system. Showed some good stuff last year. They still have Desmond King, too, who can play. He's not a perennial Pro Bowler, but, he can cover some guys and get out there. And I'm sure they'll get some guys in the draft as well. So, yeah, it's a bummer because of how much potential Verrett had, but just, when you're not going to pay a guy that isn't on the field. It's just, that's the name of the game. You got to be healthy. We've seen so many times guys not get re-signed or get out of the league altogether just because they're not on the field.
Right.
Can't play if you're not healthy. So,
I mean, look at Eric Berry. I mean, arguably, when healthy, best safety in the game, and he was being paid like it. But if you're not on the field, you're not earning that paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's still a business. It's still a business.
Yeah. Oh, would that pain you if instead of Sue they used that $12 million to bring in Eric Berry?
Of course, it would pain me. But I want to see the guy be successful, and I think the Chargers would be a great place for him. To be honest with you, but I don't want to see it happen. But if it happens, I'll applaud for him and I'll be happy for him.
When we were talking about this a couple weeks ago, we mentioned guys like Earl Thomas paired with Derwin James. You mentioned the Honey Badger, who now is signed with the Chiefs. And this was all before the Chiefs had released Berry. So, I mean, pairing Berry and Derwin James, that's a pretty nasty back end as well.
Oh, it's great. It would be a great pairing, especially for James, who's got all the talent in the world, but he's still a young guy and still learning. So to bring in a veteran like Berry to have that mentor for James to play alongside you, hell yeah, man, that'd be great. I think it'd be a good place for Berry and for James and for that entire defense.
Yeah, Ooh, that'd be interesting to see. I mean, I know he's talked to a few teams, but that'd be an interesting one. We'll keep our hands on the pulse of that one.
Yes, we will.
We'll keep you updated. So, all right, should we get into a little college now?
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
UCLA had their pro day today. Today is Tuesday. It's funny, both UCLA and USC, last year their pro days, obviously a ton of hype around with Josh Rosen and Sam Darnold, respectively. So there was, more of a media frenzy, whereas this year, not necessarily, no discredit to the guys there. Obviously, all of them have worked their tails off and deserve this opportunity, but there's just not the hype that there's been in years past, specifically last year. But one guy that me and you are high on, I think is going to be a game changer in the NFL, who participated at the pro day, Caleb Wilson, tight end. I think he's going to do some big things. I'll let you lead off. Just give me your thoughts on him, and then we can talk about his pro day a little bit.
Yeah, Caleb Wilson, super productive tight end for UCLA. He was arguably their best receiver last year. UCLA struggled, but Caleb Wilson seemed to be that staple. He always seemed to be available and very reliable. I like the kid. I think he's talented. I think he can go out there, and I think he can be a starter in the league. I think he's a value guy. He's not going to be a first-round guy. He's maybe not even second. He might slip to the third. But whoever gets him, I think, just got a steal, and he's going to compete for a starting role.
Yeah, I think huge steal. I mean, this guy is super talented. I think he's not getting talked about a lot just because of how poor of a season the UCLA program had in general. Obviously, a very good ending and a lot of excitement now heading down the future, what Chip Kelly is doing there. And they kind of talked about that a lot at the pro day, which is the excitement for the future. And some of these kids were saying, man, like, if I could, I would stay. Or it's a bummer to be leaving now because of where the direction is going. But just a couple numbers to throw at you out, Caleb Wilson, who I think is a top sleeper pick. I think he's going to do some big things. If he slips that third round, whoever gets him is going to be very excited, I think. So, couple numbers. His season in 2018, he played 11 games. He finished with 60 receptions, 965 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Who are the top 2 tight end recruits currently in this year's class?
Well, it's got to be, arguably Hawkinson and Fant, both from Iowa, but you got to throw Irv Smith in there as well.
Okay, yeah. So I'm mentioning Hawkinson and Fant, who are the 2 kind of premier tight ends in the class, and rightfully so. They're going to do, I think, really good things, and they showed out at their combine and also just throughout the season. But just looking at the numbers, I know we do a lot more. We do film watching and stuff too. We watch a lot of UCLA football, so there's more that goes into just numbers. But just to put it in a little perspective here, Noah Fant is considered or I'll start with TJ Hawkinson, who's more of a dual tight end, a true tight end, if you will. Inline block and can also get on catch the ball, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so kind of the full package there. So he played 13 games, so two more than Wilson. He finished the season with 49 receptions, so 11 less, 760 yards, so 200 less, and 6 touchdowns, so 2 more touchdowns. Noah Fant, who's kind of considered the athletic, almost more Y receiver playing at the tight end position, or excuse me, like Z receiver playing, but just the big body playing tight end, played in 12 games, so one more, finished with 39 receptions, 519 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So almost half the receptions and half the yards. And as I mentioned, he's rightfully one of the top tight ends in this class. But that's just to put into perspective, kind of Caleb Wilson, his under the radar. Here's another number to throw at you. Who was the number one in terms of yards tight end in the NFL last year? It was almost your boy, but it got broken an hour later the same day.
I would say George Kittle.
George Kittle, who broke Travis Kelce's record, who broke it literally in the morning game about most receiving yards as a tight end in NFL history. For 350 yards, 400 yards or so less than George Kittle. Obviously, the game is different. It's college, it's Pac-12 versus NFL. I'm not trying to speculate that, but just to kind of really wrap people's head around, think about this Caleb Wilson kid. He's got a lot of potential and really, really talented. He played. He actually. Here's a little fun fact for you. He originally committed to Old Dominion to play quarterback. So just shows his athleticism. He then, instead of going decommitted to Old Dominion, committed to USC, who his dad coached at. He was a redshirt freshman at USC. His dad got fired by Clay Helton, so then he transferred to UCLA and then had a good tight end career at UCLA. So I'm big on Caleb Wilson. I think he's going to do some big things in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like Caleb too. I know we watched him all year long. One of the bright spots for the Bruins last year. One thing that's going to hurt his stock is his blocking ability. I mean, he's not great at it. He's that's being kind.
Yes.
But someone's going to take a flyer on him. Someone's going to want this kid in their room. He's got a great football IQ, like you mentioned. He's the son of a football coach. Very athletic, underrated athlete. But yeah, he's not going to give you much in the way it's of blocking. But in today's NFL, you need a receiving tight end threat. I mean, look at Kelce, look at Kittle, look how Gronk did a few years ago. That's just kind of the way of the world now. So yeah, Caleb Wilson's going to make some money being a receiving threat in the NFL.
Yeah, and a guy you can look at that practices just a few highways away is Gerald Everett, who the Rams took in the second round out of South Alabama, who can't block at all. He's basically just a big receiver playing tight end, and he got taken in the second round. Now I wouldn't call him a disappointment, but he's been underutilized or hasn't been very productive so far in the NFL. I think Caleb Wilson can be more prominent in an offensive with his role more than Gerald Everett, and Gerald Everett was a second-round pick. Not saying he should have been, and I still think he's a good athlete, and he's going to turn out, and he's done some good things for the Rams, but just stating or overstating at this point probably that I'm pretty big on Caleb Wilson. I think some good things out of the UCLA project.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing that's kind of hurting Wilson's year is just the tight end class versus the year Everett was drafted. I would grade Wilson above Everett personally, but just the other names in this tight end class just keep pushing Wilson down.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've mentioned it. He's going to be good.
Yeah, and not to mention his 40 time at the combine, second fastest tight end 40 time, 4.56 seconds. So just freak fast for a tight end.
Yep.
And so at his pro day today, he just did. He didn't run the 40. I don't think he needed to. I think he proved enough at the combine. So he did bench, did 14 reps. So not overly strong, but not bad. And then he just ran like drills and stuff and looked good in the drills as well. So overall, good pro day. Didn't affect his stock, I don't think, whatsoever. I think people know what he is, what they're going to do. He impressed the combines. That was kind of the big thing. So I have him as a second round grade. I think he'll probably slip to the third, though, depending on where those initial. If we see 3 tight ends go in the first, if we see Fant, Hawkinson, and Irv Smith Jr., out of Alabama all go in the first, then maybe he will get taken in the second. But we'll see.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if there's a run on tight end somewhere early on, yeah, Wilson's just he'll get bumped up.
Yeah, I mean Baltimore's taking one for sure.
They
we
always do every year.
we
It's
joke.
almost death taxes. Baltimore drafts a tight end.
Yeah, we joke about that every show, and it's not going to stop until they stop drafting tight ends. So speaking of tight ends, our boy Max Williams hasn't been picked up yet. We talked
He
about him
hasn't.
too. Yeah,
He hasn't. That's another guy we mentioned that could be a good fit for that Chargers room.
Chargers room. Yeah, Adams with Hunter Henry. So
Yep.
all right. Well, other guys that participated. You had the punter Stephen Flintoff, who was injured for the last game with a hip flex, I believe, or hip flexor injury. He's healthy. Said himself that he had an off day. Just didn't get into a groove. But talented guy, had a good career at UCLA. We don't talk about punters a lot on this show, but they still suit up. They change the
Punters are
field.
people too.
They're people too. They change the field position, and when you have a bad punter, you know you have a bad punter. If you have a good punter, you know you have a good punter. So he could still hear his name called, or he'll definitely probably walk on somewhere and try to make a team. Wilton Speet, who was transferred from Michigan and was injured a lot of last year, but he had a good workout. He's an interesting guy because you know the name Jed Fish, right?
I'll be honest, I do not.
So Jed Fish was an OC with Michigan and an OC with UCLA. And then now he is I don't know his exact position, but he coached with the Rams. So
There you go.
he was with Speed at Michigan, then he kind of got Speed over to UCLA, and now he's with the Rams. So it would not shock me. I know the Rams just brought in Bortles. I'm not saying Wilton Speed's even talented enough to be a backup, but it would not shock me at all if he doesn't get drafted in the 7th round, that he wouldn't be a free agent walk-on. I think the Rams make the most sense, at least be a camp arm there, just with the connection with Jed Fish. So, but yeah, he had a good day. He's a battler. Always had an uphill battle throughout his whole career. So he's got a good head on his shoulders, and he's another guy I could see being a coach one day. I know we talk about these quarterbacks that don't exactly have the talent to play at the next level, but they have the IQ. He's a guy I could see doing that.
Yeah, I think Wilton's going to be a guy that we see in the AAF or the XFL. I don't know if he's really going to make it in the NFL. He's a good kid. He started for UCLA at the beginning of the year for my God, Chip. Sorry, God, cannot remember his name. All I could think of was Clay Helton, but no, Chip Kelly.
Old Chip.
Old Chip. But yeah, no. I think Wilton. He's not going to get drafted. I don't see it happening. But it'll be fun to watch him in the AAF.
Yeah, and it's nice now that we have those developmental leagues for guys like him to go and maybe get a second chance or just extend their career before maybe hitting into the coaching ranks. So, 2 more guys I'd like to mention at the pro day: Andre James, offensive tackle. He did 21 reps of the bench press at his combine, so he's more of a. I should have mentioned this before, but Caleb Wilson and Andre James were the only 2 UCLA players invited to the combine, but they both participated in the pro day, just to kind of continue their poise. Do you see James getting drafted? I mean, he'll play guard. He's only 6'4", 29, not super athletic, so he's going to slide inside of that guard position at the next level. But do you see him being drafted, or do you think he'll be more of a walk-on?
No, I think we'll hear his name. I mean, it'll be fairly late. We're not going to hear him on day 1 or 2, but I think I think someone will take him. I mean, the kid his tape's fairly good. Someone will take him.
Yeah.
He will get drafted. I don't think he'll go completely undrafted, but is he going to be a starter in the league, or is he going to be kind of relied on to, like you said, he'll slide inside. He'll add depth for someone. I don't think he's a starter, but I think he'll be one of those guys where he adds depth for an NFL team. But no, he's not going to be a starter. But yes, he will get drafted.
Yeah, I think so too. Like I said, not super athletic, but at playing guard, 6'4", 300, has good size there. A strong guy, pretty quick with his feet, so I think he can make an impact for sure. Last guy, Adarius Pickett, safety. 5'11" and 200 pounds, so he's a good size for a safety. Tackling machine. Do you know how many tackles he ended with last year?
I do not.
Like, just wait till you hear this number. As a safety, it's shocking.
Hmm.
123 total tackles.
Ooh, yeah, that's a lot.
That's a
That's a
tackling
lot for any position.
machine. So this is a guy that doesn't get a lot of talk about. He wasn't even invited to the combine, but I think he can be a definite special teamer for sure, and can kind of build his way up a roster. So I think he'll hear his name called as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I do think he's a perfect guy for a special team. I mean, you want somebody that's got a nose for the football, and that's what Pickett is. He's got a nose for the football, and he's a headhunter, and I like that. I like that. Perfect special teams guy.
Yeah, so a guy you want on the roster that's just gonna get after it and just has a nose for the football, whether it be on special teams or on defense. So Darius Pickett had a good pro day as well. So he'll, yeah, these guys will keep prepping. We'll wish the best for him. So moving on to USC, who tomorrow has their pro day, or Wednesday morning, depending when you listen to this podcast. Um, they have, what do they have, 8 or 9 guys participating. Um, Obviously, they had 5 guys at the combine, so they should be participating as well at the pro day, but it'd just be to, kind of build on their stock already. Even probably the big name guys: Eamon Marshall, Porter Gustin, Cameron Smith, Chuma Edoga. I always say that wrong. Edoga, offensive tackle, and they got the safety Marvell Tell. So all those guys, talented guys, are going to be drafted in the draft. I like Porter Gustin a lot, outside backer, good rusher. I think we'll see some good things from him tomorrow. Um, yeah, anything you want to mention? We'll basically precursor this as our next show. We're going to talk more about their USC's pro days, so not a lot to talk about them right now.
Yeah, no, I think Idoga is going to do well. I think this guy has potential to be a starter in the league at tackle or guard. He looked really good at the Senior Bowl. Had a fairly good showing at the combine. Didn't blow anybody out of the water. Kind of did what everybody expected him to do. But no, I'm looking forward to seeing what Idoga does in the rest of this process and where he lands. I like Gustin. I don't know if he's going to be. I know he used to be compared a lot to Clay Matthews, and we were talking about that a little bit earlier with the look and the hair
It's
and all
just
that stuff.
it's the white dude, edge rusher, USC, long hair. It's like, how can
Yep.
you not compare him to Clay Matthews?
Right? Yeah. Pretty hard not to, but yeah, he'll be a role player. I like Gustin. I think uh, he's not the how do I say this kindly? Um, I wouldn't call him the greatest athlete in the world, and I mean he's very long, 6'4", 255, but you know, uh, is he the kind of guy that you want? He's not going to break the sack record. He's not going to. I don't think he'll ever have a double digit sack season. But he's a guy that you can bring in and he can step in it and get some reps and kind of give your starters a little bit of breather. And in other words, he can add depth. That's probably the easiest and most simplest way I can say that. And probably I should have said it a little bit ago instead of just rambling like I just did.
Yeah, depth and special teamer. I mean, that's what you look for in the 6th and 7th round, 5th round, and I think he'll kind of be in that 4th, 5th, 6th round grade. That's kind of what I have him as. Um, wouldn't be shocked to see him go higher. Wouldn't be shocked to see him go lower. But I think that 4th and 5th is kind of the sweet spot where I like to see him go. But I think he can do. Yeah, I think he can even add more on his pro day. Even Marshall, another guy we've talked about before, talented corner, kind of a little underdeveloped still, so he'll be another depth guy. Some guys that weren't invited to the combine that'll be interesting to watch for tomorrow. I always say it wrong. Aka Cedric Ware. Did I get that right?
Yeah, Aka Cedric Ware. Yep.
Aka Cedric Ware, the running back who led the team in rushing last year, didn't put up anything crazy, but like 825 yards and 6 touchdowns. So still a talent there. Another corner besides Marshall, they have Ajeen Harris, and then offensive guard Chris Brown, who obviously the big lineman everyone talking about is, as you mentioned, Chuma Idoga. But Brown had he was solid at SC. He was actually USC's highest graded lineman according to PFF, Pro Football Focus. So, he has talent. He can play the guard position. He's a good sized body, so he'll be another guy to kind of watch for tomorrow to see how he performs.
Yeah, yeah. This is a kid that can only help his stock. He's not going to hurt it. Because at this point, I don't know if he's on a lot of people's radars. But yeah, hopefully he can. He's been preparing. He's been training. So hopefully he can show out tomorrow.
Yeah. It's especially because those last three, as I mentioned, weren't at the combine, so all they can do is build on their stock and kind of make a name for themselves for scouts or GMs that don't really didn't watch a lot of USC this year, considering it was a down year. So they need to do something to build it up. So hopefully they'll show out tomorrow. Might be it's funny because I remember last year's pro day with Sam Darnold and all the hype, and it was a rainy day. And
Mm-hmm.
guess what's scheduled tomorrow? It's supposed to rain.
Rain.
So it
Yes, sir.
must be a thing at USC pro days to have rain at least the last couple of years.
Must be, yeah.
So I mean I don't know if that helps or hurts or is a non-factor, but it's something. It's weather. The weather
Something to
outside is weather.
something to note.
Yeah, football's played outside, right?
It it is most of the time.
Unless you're in like New Orleans or Detroit or Atlanta
So,
or Dallas or
or
Arizona.
LA in a few years.
Yeah, so whatever. We still have like 60%. If you're in Denver or Kansas City, it's outdoors. So,
Yeah. Yep.
well, there you have it. Anything else you want to add before we sign off on this first episode of the LA Football Podcast?
Yeah. There's a cool little story I came across. I don't know how much it's getting talked about, but it's worth noting and worth mentioning. Jake Olson, who's the he's blind because his due to cancer, but he was a long snapper for USC. He's the one with the really cool story, and
Great
he
story.
was featured on ESPN when he's a big fan when he was 12 years old and had a relationship with Pete Carroll and all that stuff. And then he was brought onto the team. But anyway, to get to the point, um, to raise awareness and to raise money for now bear with me, retinoblastoma. I
Yes.
think I got that right.
Someone's been watching
Um,
Grey's Anatomy.
right. Thank you, Netflix. Yeah, to raise awareness for that illness, which is what Jake Olson had. He is going to be performing bench press reps, and people are donating money. And for each rep he gets, that money will be donated for cancer research. And that's taking place tomorrow at the USC Pro Day. So shout out to Jake Olson. Great story, great kid. Would love to have him on the podcast someday soon. Um, you know, I've seen interviews and he's nothing but a bright and spirited kid and who's been through a lot. But you would never know it by talking to him. And just shout out to Jake for such a great idea and for doing this at the USC Pro Day to raise cancer awareness. And I think it's an honor and a privilege to have this kid represent such a great school.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that. I don't know if you have it in front of you, do you have where people can actually donate or where they can pledge?
I don't right in front of me.
I'd love if we could. Let me
But you know
see.
what? That's something we could share on Twitter once we figure that out.
Yeah, let's we can stall for a second,
Yeah. Let's do that.
I'm
That's not a
looking
bad idea.
yeah, cuz it's a good cause and it's such an awesome story and what a just a he really embodies what it is to be a Trojan, what it is to play for USC. And so I think if you just go to pledgeit.org, I think is actually where you I think I'm out there right now. So basically, you can either go to Google and just type in, Jake Olson Pledgeit, or if you want the full link, it's pledgeit.org/Jake Olson 2019. But that's gonna be hard to remember. So nowadays,
Yeah,
just
if you if you do go to pledgeit.org, it's right there on the front page.
oh, okay,
Jake
there you go.
Olson's reps for retinoblastoma. That's what they're calling it. Jake Olson's reps for retinoblastoma. They've per rep right now the figure is at $1,854, and the estimated amount is going to be $37. So yeah, if we can do anything we can to raise that money and to up that amount,
Hell
and
yeah.
hopefully Jake's feeling strong tomorrow. Hopefully to steal Baker's comments. Hopefully he's feeling dangerous.
Feeling dangerous. Absolutely. Hell yeah. No, they're at about 37,000 right now. The goal was 250,000. So let's if the coach and the Don can help get that goal a little closer, that'd be great. So anyone out there listening, go to pledgeit.org and put some money down for retinoblastoma. So that's a good way to end it. Great way to end the first episode of LA Football Podcast, brought to you by the Bleav Sports Network. Coach, it's a pleasure as always.
Yes, sir. I agree. It
Yeah,
is a pleasure, and looking forward to it, man.
yeah, we're super excited about the future of the show. We're gonna have a lot of awesome guests coming on. We're actually gonna probably be having one this Saturday. We won't give it away yet, but someone that we are excited about. So make sure to tune in. Because this is a new show, still the Coach and the Don. Make sure to subscribe to the new RSS feed. So go to iTunes, Spotify. We're gonna tweet it out, do all that. Um, Make sure to check that out. Obviously, we still run sportsaldente.com. Make sure to check that out. Use the promo code The Coach and the Don for 10% off any of our subscription packages. So we're an LA-based sports website. So all the teams you love out here in LA, all the football teams, just like we cover them on the site, just for some added coverage. So make sure to go check out sportsaldente.com and subscribe to that. Subscribe to LA Football on Bleav.com. Yeah, I think I hit all my plugs. So I had to get it in there somewhere, right?
Of course, of course.
So well, there you go. Well, the first episode, we're super pumped. Thanks everyone for listening. We will talk to you in a couple days.